let's take a look at our top selections. Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer. It's Preakness week at last. And on Thursday at Pimlico, there are going to be 3 stakes races, 1 graded. We'll start things off with race number 6, the Jim McKay Turf Sprint, 5/8 of a mile on the weeds. Before we get to the analysis, remember to head on over to shop.drf.com this week for the Preakness Day betting strategies. Preakness, Black-Eyed Susan, lots of stakes races, lots of nice wagers available on the Preakness card. Let's throw up the field for the Jim McKay Turf Sprint. This race kicks off a 50-cent pick 5 with a low 12% takeout rate. Field of 10 entered for the Jim McKay Turf. Texas Wedge is the 9-5 morning line favorite. I have a feeling that it's going to be a little bit of a battle at post time, Mike, among Texas Wedge, Completed Pass, and Francatelli for favoritism.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wouldn't be surprised if the 2 winds up favored just because, you know, he's got the class lines edge over his 2 main rivals in here, but I do think it could be close.
Number 1, Axtell is 30-1 on the morning line. We'll take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race. Axtell is in mid-pack, and this is a horse that usually likes to be close to the pace. The pace is expected to be too fast for Axtell here, who's also cross-entered on the Claiming Crown prep card on Friday at Pimlico. I would not be surprised if he goes there. There are some legitimate class questions he would have to answer if he runs in this spot.
Yeah, they should run him in the other race. You know, this is a horse who is 4 for 41 and is looking for his first win in over 2 years, Dan. He's in pretty tough against this field.
Texas Wedge is dropping back to 5/8 of a mile for the first time since he won the World of Trouble Sprint on, I believe it was Pegasus World Cup Day, way back in January at Gulfstream Park. I thought he ran well in his subsequent start to Daytona, where he was wide pretty much every step of the way and was only beaten a length. And I thought he ran okay in the Jaipur, making the first move into a hot pace before understandably tiring. I don't know what happened in the Shakertown, but he wouldn't be the first horse in the world that just didn't fire at Keeneland.
Yeah, and that was just a better field than this one also. I mean, he didn't run great in that race. He got actually a pretty good trip in there and had a shot at it and wasn't really close to good enough in that race. But his prior races are all actually really good, and they make him a major player in here.
Tempting me twice, 2 starts back against optional claiming competition. He ran okay. He was up to the close to the pace that day. No match for favored Battle Station at Delaware going 5/8. They ran him in the Laurel Dash last time out. And despite getting a little bit of give in the ground, which he doesn't mind, he just did not fire. He was part of a fast pace and he paid the price.
Yeah, I guess that field was just too good for him. And that's a real problem for this horse because this field's even better than that one. So I just don't see how he's really competitive against this field.
Love You Much is a horse that's run well at Pimlico. He won over this surface last year. Last time out at Laurel maybe was a sign that he's starting to come back into form. I mean, he was following Completed Pass, a horse that we'll get to in a little bit, and just had unbelievable trouble in that race. And Love You Much was steadied a little bit and was forced to alter course inside, but he didn't have anywhere near the trouble Completed Pass had, and he didn't win. But give this horse some pace over this course, and I think he's an interesting exotics threat at a price.
Yeah, I agree. Of the long shots, this is a horse you want to consider at least underneath. I thought it would be hard for him to beat this field, assuming, you know, everybody sort of shows up and runs their good race. I doubt that he could beat all of those horses, but he's very consistent. He could get a good trip in this race.
Like Axtell, the number 5 Fair Catch is also entered on the Claiming Crown prep portion of the Friday card and probably fits better there. But let's go back to his most recent turf effort, his one and only race on the turf. It is against condition claimers. He showed good speed. He beat 3 minor next out winners, but he just keeps on trucking in the Gold Silks on the rail.
Yep, got to the lead in this race, took a little bit of pressure and just held it all the way down to the wire. It makes him 1 for 1 on turf in his career, Dan. He hasn't been back on it since. You know, the flip side of that coin is he earned a 65 buyer winning that race against weaker competition, and he's going to have to improve a lot to go with this field.
Completed Pass is just a racehorse. There's no doubt about that in my mind. He won this race last year, and let's just watch the trip he had in the Laurel Dash. Maybe not for the faintest of heart. He's in behind horses. He's the number 7. They're looking for room, and oh no, he almost goes down. And what does he do? He dusts himself off. He finds some room finally in between horses here. He squeezes on through, and he goes on with it. And he ends up winning for the 8th time in his career. This was a remarkable performance considering that he almost ended up on the turf.
Yeah, just the way that he recovered so quickly from that incident at the top of the stretch. And then, just had the wherewithal to gather himself and win the race very comfortably at the end. Dan, you got to give him extra credit for it. He's a really good horse. And you saw Love You Much there in behind him there for much of the stretch run, sort of altered course a couple times. That horse ran fine as well. But boy, considering the trouble completed pass had, it'd be hard to want to take anybody else out of that race over this horse.
That is certainly a fair point. Dr. Feelgood is the number 7, entered main track only. All this West Virginia bred has done is win 12 of 14. He has won, 8 out of his last 9. And I guess he would be a factor if this race was somehow washed off of the turf. We'll move on to the 8, Tiger Blood. I'm willing to forgive Tiger Blood's last race against Imprimis at Kentucky Downs. That 6 furlongs at Kentucky Downs is a real demanding 6 furlongs, especially over soft going. Tiger Blood needs a shorter distance. He's getting it here. He has some speed. I just think 7-2 on the morning line's too light.
Yeah, and then, also adding that he just faced a really good field last time, too. I would also give him sort of the added, perhaps excuse that day. Not that he was going to win, but, given a horse like him, that sort of 4-wide rating trip, that's probably not going to work, especially against that kind of a field. He's got more speed than that, but he doesn't need to be on the lead. I would argue that in the Ellis race 2 starts back, he was best that day, despite finishing second. He had a lot of traffic in the stretch and ran a lot better than it looks on paper. And prior to that, he was holding his own against some good horses. I think he makes a lot of sense in this race.
He is Hickory, seeking his 20th lifetime victory. Hollis is the number 9. Now, Hollis has been competing in an off-the-turf race last time out, was a winner when dangled in for the $40,000 tag. 2 starts back, chased a fast pace in that Tiger Blood race. I couldn't find the excuse other than the wet turf course. And if you want to say this horse didn't like giving the ground, you go back 1 start, solid enough win, still has to improve off that race.
It feels like he is getting better. He still has a little bit of that X factor feel about him. He's a very lightly raced 5-year-old, very few turf starts. And as you mentioned, you can give him the soft turf excuse for the last one. So you sort of have the feeling you don't know how good he is, Dan. I don't really want to bet him in here, but he's going to be a good price if you like him.
There are some real hard-hitting, salty veterans in this race, but perhaps the horse with the most wow factor is the 10 Francatelli. Let's watch his last race, going 5/8 over the inner turf in the King Corey Stakes. Just too much speed. Went right to the front, shook loose, draws away, second consecutive 94 Beyer speed figure. He has won his last 3 starts by a combined, 16 lengths or so, and he looks like the main speed once again. Francatelli still has some upside, Mike. I mean, he just paired up Beyer tops. It's possible that he could pop another big fig in here, and they're all running for second if that's the case.
It's definitely possible. This is obviously a tougher spot, so he's got something to prove against this field. But boy, he is wicked fast. I mean, in each of his last 3 starts, they just could not keep him from the lead. And it's not like, horses are getting to this horse at the end of his races. He is just widening on field. This horse looks like he has a good amount of ability. There's a couple of sweeps to his inside. It might be harder for him to make the front in this race, Dan, but I like this horse. I think he's good.
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Jim McKay Turf Sprint. You hinted at who you liked. You're going with Francatelli. Again, done nothing wrong in his last 3. Blowout potential, big early speed. Love You Much as a horse. I think you made a very good case. It's kind of hard, I guess, to pick against Completed Pass, considering the trips everyone got in that race. The trips are relative, and Love You Much had a much easier trip than Completed Pass. I just have a feeling the situation's going to work out for him. I think there's going to be a lot of pace in this race, and I think Love You Much has a chance to, at least at the price he's going to be, outrun his odds. I want to play him. I have to play your horse, Francatelli, and I have to play the 8 horse as well. I think Tiger Blood's very interesting as well.
Well, price is always a consideration, Dan, and it's not like Love You Much, had some candy trip last time. He had a little bit of trouble of his own. He just didn't have as much trouble as the other horse. It'll be a much better price in here. I'm taking Francatelli. I was kind of against Texas Wedge, especially if he's going to be the favorite. So I like the 10 and the 8 most.
You're going 10, 8, 2, 6. I'm going 4, 10, 8, and 6. Probably in my pick 5s, I'd use all 4. Probably most weight on the 10 Francatelli, the 6 Completed Pass, and backups with Love You Much, who's going to be a big price, and the 8. And I'll bet Love You Much to win. Jim McKay Turf Sprint, Pimlico race number 6, approximate post time, 3:25 Eastern. Best of luck.